Hey, what's up? Um, Coming back with just a quick analysis of um, the use of the Kimura in half guard. Um, in my most recent competition, I uh, spent a lot of time trying to turn the Kimura from half guard into a more offensive position, and we'll just review and go over, some of the places where I could have improved um, in my match. So. Just going to skip right to the section with the Kimura. Um, so I am on bottom, and my opponent steps over, and I get half guard. I'm looking first to get my lockdown in to sort of get my opponent off of me, and then as he moves over, I right here I lock in the Kimura. Um, it's unfortunate the camera is in the wrong position, so you can't really see it. Um, but you can sort of see that as I lock in the Kimura, I'm sort of coming into him for a split second. So here you see I'll reach in and my body definitely turns into my opponent. And then immediately after, I'm sort of letting my opponent escape, or not escape, but pass my legs, so I can initiate the hot dog roll. Um, and what that does is I'm trying to use the momentum of my swing to try and knock my opponent over and take the back. So I was not able to achieve that. So if we rewind, he steps over, I begin my roll, and it's at this critical moment which determines whether or not I knock my opponent down. So there are a couple things that are going for my opponent. Um, First, he is on his knees, and his legs are generally spread apart, so his base is quite strong. Um, and then second, my opponent begins to posture as he sees me coming around um, to take his back. So when he postures, it makes it very difficult for me to actually knock him over. Um, and that combined with his wide base makes it pretty difficult. Two things also needed to happen for me to knock him over. One is my right forearm, right, right here. Um, I want that to be pushed into his chest. So it's a combination of me pushing the Kimura into his hip, which sort of keeps his posture down. Um, and then it's a combination of my forearm into his chest, and then using the Kimura to flare my opponent's elbow inward. And so it's kind of like I'm pushing his body over while keeping his shoulder sort of locked in position. And that would have helped me to knock him over. I think my body started to come up here because his foundation was so strong. Um, and so uh, his base, and then by then I had lost of my momentum, and he started to come in and take north-south position. I still had the Kimura at this point, and so he is keeping his arm straight, which makes the Kimura much less powerful. Um, like when if you think about a Kimura, it's only powerful when the arm is bent, because the flaring action of the arm is what um, manipulates the location of the shoulder. So if I straighten my arm, there's really no flaring action that can happen. Um, so he attempts to break my Kimura with his knee. I'm holding on to it pretty tight, so I readjust it back to his hip. And I attempt a couple more times, basically swinging in order to try and knock him over. And you can see that the momentum is significant. Like I am lifting, let me rewind. I am lifting my opponent like off the ground. But you can see his legs are very spread apart. So I think like after 2 or 3 attempts of trying to knock him over, I was thinking, okay, yeah, this isn't going to and this isn't going to work. So maybe it's time to come um, maybe it's time to come over. And so he begins to frame on my hip here, which makes it very, very difficult for me to um, gain the momentum necessary to start the hot dog roll again. Um, and so in jiu-jitsu, anytime someone decides to put up a frame, um, one of the concepts is, if you run directly into that frame, that's the reason why the frame is there. It's to stop you from moving in a particular direction. In this case, this frame sort of prevents me from getting enough momentum for the hot dog roll. But it's also just one hand against the movement of my legs and my hips. So keeping that in mind, I believe I tried going above, sort of throwing my left leg here in order to try and catch an arm saddle. Um, and so ideally, the left leg would either post on the hip, and I should be more on my side, and then eventually the left leg will loop through to the other side of my opponent's hip. And so essentially what that does is I use my legs as a frame in order to make space for me to pull the on my opponent's arm and separate the Kimura from him being able to defend it. Um, so I didn't achieve the arm saddle, but I decided to try and go over my opponent um, into almost like a north-south position. And again, he postures, and um, based on the positioning of my legs, I try to turn it into an armbar. Um, so the armbar was not tight enough, and there are two things contributing to this. One, both my legs are below the shoulder line, so um, there's really nothing holding my opponent from pushing his head in. And if he can push his head in, then it's hard for me to extend an armbar and finish it. Second, my bottom foot, which right here is my left foot, it's not a very strong wedge to trap the arm, and so my opponent easily gets out. And then we go, he goes north-south, but I'm making sure that my legs are inside of his arms, and so he can't take up the space inside my hips, and I retain my guard. So here we go again. I'm essentially regaining the Kimura just on the other side this time. And you see how I scoot my hips out. So once you get the Kimura on your opponent, you want to try and get their hand behind their back. And one way to do it is for me to take my hips and sort of start to scoot under and to the left here right now in the video. That gives me the appropriate leverage to take my opponent's arm and put it behind their back. Alternatively, you can also make space, like what I'm doing here. Like you can see me visibly scoot my hips out to make space for my legs, so I can put my half guard in, put my butterfly hook in so I can maybe sweep him overhead, or I can initiate another hot dog roll. So there I'm making space. This time around, though, my opponent does have one of my legs, and so he's controlling my ability to really make space. And so I come up. And so this would have been an opportunity, since I have one leg in, to take my left leg and to back step over over my opponent's left leg. And as I backstep to roll, and which puts my opponent into a saddle position. Unfortunately, that was outside of the rules for this competition. Like, I didn't want to risk the saddle being interpreted as a knee reap, so that was a move that I did not go for. So he kind of crushes me here, and I still have the Kimura, but I achieve my half guard again. Here you see me sort of slip my knee shield in, and now I'm making space for my butter half guard here. At this point, I should have learned my lesson, because I'm still trying to make space here. I'm still trying to make space, and I feel like I should have learned that after all of the times that I tried doing the hot dog roll, that perhaps doing like an overhead sweep or going more for the arm saddle would have been a better response for me to achieve what I was trying to achieve. So here, I should have went over my right shoulder here and used my butterfly hook to sweep my opponent over, and from there work on into top position, instead of using this butter half here to just make space and go for another hot dog roll. I think here I tried also to get my right foot here into his hip pocket again, for a potential arm saddle. I needed to be way more on my side, like a little bit more, plus add a little bit of hip height in order for my foot to actually reach all the way there. So just a couple adjustments. And just like being a little bit more aware of like what your opponent's tendencies are. Like if you've tried a hot dog roll and it's failed, 2 to 3 times after you've adjusted and tried again and again, maybe it's time to try a different move within the same, Kimura system. So like if I keep getting that Kimura in half guard, there are plenty of things I can do. I could do the hot dog roll. I can turn it into an arm saddle. I could do an overhead sweep. I could get the arm saddle and pull my bottom leg out and go for an ultra Kimura. I could rotate around the Kimura arm in order to attack triangles and arm bars. So a lot of options. It's just a matter of being able to sense that in the moment and cycling through your options. So just a short analysis on some of the Kimura stuff that I've been doing, and places where I could improve. Hopefully this helps out. See ya.